we caught up with 𝗕𝗪𝗓 from Zilliqa.
Let's get into it.
So today we had the luxury of actually catching up with 𝗕𝗪𝗓 from Zilliqa. We've been trying to put this thing together for a while, and fortunately enough, our diaries are finally aligned, and we were finally able to spend some time together today to talk all about Zilliqa. As we get into this video, guys, hopefully you will find it useful and informative, and maybe even entertaining at times. If you do, then hit that like button. We both really do appreciate it. And of course, if you're new to the channel and you want to stay up to date with those new cryptocurrencies and hidden gems that we talk about here, then why not subscribe to the channel? By subscribing, you'll be kept up to date with everything we do here at Cheeky Crypto. It is free, you'll stay well informed, so why not? And with that said and done, Chris, anything you would like to add before we jump on down and catch up with 𝗕𝗪𝗓 here?
Yeah, just really interested to know, how early did you get in when investing in Zilliqa? Let us know in the comments below. Really interested.
Fantastic. Hi and welcome to Cheeky Crypto. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us today. Our viewers have been eagerly requesting this interview for some time, and it is great that our diaries have finally come together. Shall we start with a brief introduction from yourself, 𝗕𝗪𝗓?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is 𝗕𝗪𝗓𝗃𝗪𝗓, and I'm the president, one of the co-founders and chief science officer at Zilliqa. My background is in research. So before joining Zilliqa, I was working as a postdoctoral researcher at the National University of Singapore. And prior to that, I was doing my PhD in France, right near to the Alps, by the way. So not a bad place to do PhD. But yeah, my background is in research. I've always been interested in how security and privacy sort of gets involved when you're using a certain software system. And then my venture into blockchain sort of started when I decided to sort of jump into understanding what sort of security and privacy implications blockchains have. So my first venture into blockchain was through Monero. I first read Monero's white paper and then went back to Bitcoin's white paper. So it was kind of an interesting journey. But yeah, then after that, we basically started working on Zilliqa. So my journey is from a researcher towards more like, let's call it entrepreneur right now. But yeah.
That's nice. Fantastic. So could you kind of go into brief kind of detail on what Zilliqa is and how it all came to be?
Yeah. So the work on Zilliqa started even before I joined the company as one of the founders. So when I was working at the National University of Singapore, my advisor was 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗓𝗃𝗪𝗓 back then. He was looking into blockchains from a scalability perspective. So we were seeing Ethereum and Bitcoin, Ethereum particularly struggling with ICO back then. So it was, early 2018 and 2017, and we had seen CryptoKitties going live. So we saw how an application that becomes popular starts to create issues with the underlying infrastructure. So that was kind of the age when my advisor was working on sort of scalability solutions. And in fact, one of his PhD students was Loy Lu, who is the CEO of 𝗘𝗪𝗪𝗃𝗪 Network today. So he and my advisor and some of the other folks wrote a paper on sharding. So the idea of sort of how you scale a certain blockchain network by dividing the network into smaller groups called shards. So that paper sort of went through in one of the best conferences in computer security. And then sort of my advisor was looking into what to do next after this. So as you know, most academics, when you start working on a paper, it gets published and then they move to the next one. So it's project by project. But he would, he had this commercial mindset, and he said, okay, let's start with something, and let's now that we have this paper, can we do something about it in terms of commercial perspective? And so he assembled a team. I was one part of that team initially, and then we decided to work on Zilliqa. So the whole idea behind Zilliqa was to solve two key problems. One was scalability, to make sure that the platform can scale and meet the demands of popular applications. And number two is to provide a smart contract layer that allows people to write safe contracts for people to use. Because we had seen DAO hack happen when Ethereum sort of forked into Ethereum Classic. We had seen parity very soon after followed up, where funds were locked in a multi-sig wallet. And after that, every other day you see today DeFi protocols where something happens in these DeFi protocols. So the idea was to be able to build a smart contract language that would be safe to use and safe to write code in. So these were sort of two key sort of motivations on why we started Zilliqa in the first place.
That's fantastic.
That sounds good.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's definitely some that peer kind of or academic research element that definitely makes it stand out from the crowd, shall we say?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Ethereum project, this is something that I've observed over the last, let's say, 3-4 years, is that initially, of course, Bitcoin came out of that certain community, right? Cyberpunk community. And so there was always this idea that this whole Bitcoin narrative and this revolution is being brought towards by developers and engineers. And therefore, if you look at, I mean, I have said this a million times before, but the idea is that I basically say that if today, if you take Bitcoin's white paper and send to an academic, they will blindly reject it because the way it is written, because it's not substantiated, there's not much of rigor in the paper. But initially, obviously, that was kind of the sentiment for researchers as well. They were not taking it seriously because they wanted to make sure that it gains some traction before they can get their hands dirty. But yeah, that gap where developers would keep sort of pushing and coding, and while academics were waiting for something interesting to happen from Bitcoin or Ethereum, that kind of slowly sort of the gap closed as we moved along. And now I think you're at a juncture where several projects are coming from academia, including, for example, Zilliqa is one of them. Algorand, Cardano has its own roots in academia, which is good to see. Which means that now people are getting at terms, and academics are getting at terms with engineers and developers. But yeah, from our angle, our approach has been a little bit different compared to what you see in the Ethereum space, where ideas get written down, in a blog post, and then everyone starts working on it. Coming from academia, we can't lose our habits or the training that we have, earned over time. So our approach has always been to write something down, put that into an academic circle, get that peer reviewed. And once we are confident that this makes sense, once we have done that rigorous research, then only we start implementing into production systems. So that approach is a little bit different, but yes, we are already seeing some of the changes happening with some of the projects coming out from academia. So that's a good news.
It is, isn't it? It's bringing those two worlds together, isn't it? Ultimately, it's fantastic. And you say Algorand and Cardano are two of the other ones that do stand out from that approach as well. But Chris, you're saying?
I was going to say I really do like that approach. I really do, and it's good to see more of it happening in the space for sure.
Because it saves times as well. As well. Imagine you putting up an idea in a blog post. I'm not saying it's a bad idea, because it starts, encourages other people to comment on our idea more freely. But it also means that you have not done the rigorous research that needs to be done for that system to go live. And after 1 year, when you have worked on it, you decide, oh, you know what, it's not working at all. There are certain flaws in the system, and then you have to abandon it. That's one way of doing it. I'm not saying that's the right way of doing it, but that's one way of doing it. And the other way is, basically go through the research more profoundly and then decide whether it even makes sense to implement this. Because some papers or some academic research stay at a theoretical level for a long time. Many cryptography papers that were published, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, they remained in theory for a long time. Only recently, people started to sort of work that into practical systems. So that's one approach, and I think I come from the old school. And I feel that has worked for us. So we like that approach.
That's good. That's good.
Perfect. And I guess what are some of the applications and use cases that are being built on Zilliqa? Could we touch on those?
Yeah, sure. So just to give the listeners and viewers some context here. So Zilliqa, the project started around mid-2017. So let's call it the end of the ICO era. We were probably the last one who were able to go through and did a token raise. And after that, we basically started working on this project for mid-2017. Around early 2019, we launched the mainnet. So people were allowed to transact on the network. And around mid-2019, we allowed people to deploy contracts. And basically the whole network became sort of fully functional. So the first application that came after that was unstoppable domains. So it's a domain name system, very similar to ENS. People who are familiar with Ethereum, they would know that. So basically, you replace your blockchain address, which could be 0x1b, by, let's say, Chris.Zil. And then when you transfer money to Chris.Zil, the contract that's sitting on the blockchain basically translates that to a hexadecimal address and then sends the money. So that was the first application that went live. It became so popular that we had to fix some of the issues in the blockchain straight away. So that was a good problem to have. Soon after, we saw the DeFi sort of craze coming up, and we started to venture into the DeFi world as well. So we are not a proof of stake system. And so we were looking at how people could get access to the network. So for example, when you want to send transactions to the network, you need an entry point so that that can relay your transactions. In the Ethereum world, they are famously known as Infura nodes, where you basically, and developers and users all use them, whether you are directly using them or MetaMask uses it behind the scenes.
Sure.
So our idea was to be able to build an open network of Infura nodes that are incentivized to provide that service. Right now, someone pays for Infura, either consensus or users themselves. So what we decided to do was to build a network of nodes that we call seed nodes that basically will provide that information and help you connect to the network. But where the incentive is going to come from? So what we decided to do was take 40% of the block rewards and use that to incentivize these users, these providers.
Yeah.
And so that, in a way, created a staking system. Even though we don't have proof of stake, it in a way created a staking system where basically, if you want to become one of those nodes to provide that service, you need to stake a certain number of ZILs. And then other people can also delegate their ZILs with that node and then be able to harvest rewards that comes out of that 40% of the block reward. So, and as you can imagine, staking is the first, you could say, venture into DeFi because it allows people to create yields on their ZILs. And very soon after, with staking, we also launched a 𝗕𝗓𝗪 token, a governance token. So it's what we also noticed in the space that everyone was launching a governance token, whether it be Uni, Compound, and synthetics, and so on. You had all sorts of governance token. And we felt that maybe it would be a good idea to launch a governance token that's at the platform layer, so at the protocol layer. Yeah. Which can, let's say if someone wants to build an application, they could just borrow that token as a governance token. But we had to figure out how to distribute that token in a fair manner. And so what we basically did was we sort of connected that with staking. So when you stake your ZILs and when you, let's say, withdraw 1,000 ZILs as stake rewards, you get 1 𝗕𝗓𝗪. So it basically ties your activity, your wealth, and how frequently you use the network with your 𝗕𝗓𝗪. So that gives you power to become more active with the network. So we had 𝗕𝗓𝗪, and that gave us the first, let's call it, token on the chain. And then we had to build a Uniswap like exchange. We had to build a DEX because you need a DEX for the network to be able to allow to sort of build tokens. So we built the first DEX, and that was quite popular. So we launched this DEX around with the help of our partner Switcheo in around October last year. And the TVL today is around $250 million in that exchange, in that DEX. It does a volume of around 5, I think it varies, day per day, but it depends on a good day, it does a volume around 20 million USD of volume in 24 hours. So that's a good sign. And again, it has no more than 5 or 6 tokens, 5 or 6 main tokens, let's say. We also launched a stablecoin because you need stablecoin as a base pillar for all DeFi to happen. If you look at Ethereum ecosystem today, most of the lending sort of happens using USDT, USDC, or DAI, right? So we also launched a stable coin, but this was not a USD-backed stable coin, but more a Singapore dollar-backed stable coin. And surprisingly, if you look at all these, sort of fiat currencies that have been tokenized today, the first one, the biggest one, is USD-backed stable coin because they're the biggest ones. Then euros, and third one is actually the Singapore dollar-backed stable coin. Okay. So it's quite interesting. And so, so we started with DeFi. We have Uniswap like DEX today. We have a few stable coins. We are building an Ethereum Zilliqa bridge to bring more tokens from Ethereum to Zilliqa. We have a MakerDAO-like system being built. But the good thing is that this MakerDAO system will not have the MKR token. It will, in fact, use the underlying governance tokens that I was talking about earlier. So you could basically pull up your governance token that's sitting at the protocol layer, and you could take it to the application layer. So yeah, I mean, again, these are just a few examples. There are other things that are happening, and then it's literally someone is doing a fundraise today on a fantasy sports token. Okay. We have X Academy, which is a team from the UK as well. They are building a influencer-based sort of portal for people to create tokens and so on. So yeah, I mean, a lot of exciting things have happened in terms of application layers.
Nice. And you mentioned the bridge to Ethereum. Are there any sort of timelines?
So all the hard work has been done, I would say. We had one big bottleneck that we were able to fix and solve. So all the hard work has been done. The only thing is to be able to bring a nice looking front end. We are using a third party called Polynet. So basically, you have Ethereum and you have Zilliqa, and there's a Polynet that sits in between. And you basically use that network to basically relay messages back and forth. So it was in a way easier. We didn't build the whole thing from scratch ourselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the only thing that's missing right now is building a front end that allows people to, let's say, pick the source chain, which would be Ethereum, let's say, and then destination chain, which would be Zilliqa, and then pick your asset, for example, USDT, USDC, and then move them to Zilliqa. But that front end is missing yet, is missing. We are literally working on, as we speak, to build that front end. And then as soon as that's ready, we would be opening up for people to use it.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Fantastic. Yeah, it definitely is the next kind of thing that we're seeing in the space that seems to be moving at a bit of a pace, which is a little bridging, which interoperability is obviously key to forward thinking. So yeah, it's looking good. It's looking good. So what would you say, sets Zilliqa apart from other projects in the space?
Look, there are two aspects in which you could differentiate today. I mean, one is, of course, the tech aspect. But I think the more we spend time in the blockchain space, the more we understand that tech, in the end, from a user perspective, it doesn't matter really. I mean, from an investment perspective, maybe you look like, okay, this looks like a fancy tech. But a user doesn't care whether you are using a very fancy sharding technology or something else. They don't really care, as long as the system is usable. So, I do believe that in the end, you have to build a community that is willing to use the dApps that you're building, or the community that's building the dApps. And from that angle, I do think that if you look at all the blockchains today out there, and if you, let's say, rank them with the number of transactions that they have processed, not the ability, not the capacity, but more like in real world, how many transactions they have processed, Zilliqa is in top 10 or something in terms of number of transactions. If you look at the number of users that are actually engaged in some of the DeFi activities, Zilliqa would be again in top 5 or 10. Zilswap is a good example to give you a sense of how actively people are using some of these dApps. So Zilswap, Zilswap is a DEX. If you rank them, if you look at all Ethereum-based DEXs, and if you rank them by, let's say, TVL, Zilswap ranks around number 7, just next to around 1inch, exchange.
Yeah.
And quite above many of the popular DEXs that that are out there on Ethereum. If you rank them by number of users, so the number of traders who actually go on Zilswap and trade them, it ranks number 3 after Uniswap, PancakeSwap now, and then Zilswap. So that's quite encouraging number. I mean, the point I'm trying to drive here is it's all about users in the end. You want people to come and use your platform, and I do see that Zilliqa as a platform is actually being used aggressively today. Now, if you talk about tech, obviously, when we started to work on sharding, we were the first one to show to people that sharding is actually a viable solution for scaling. And now we are seeing a lot of other projects sort of following that footsteps. Whether it be, even Ethereum now, is I'm not saying that Ethereum copied us, but Ethereum is also sort of pursuing sharding because they believe that sharding is a solution that can help scale blockchains. And there are other chains like Near, for example, even Elrond now is doing sharding. So that's a good sign. So I would say that in terms of tech, we definitely have an upper hand in terms of how far we have gone with sharding being the first one. We know where the challenges lie. So sharding is not, it may sound a fancy word to solve every problem, but if you start implementing it, it's pretty complex. So we know how complex it can be. So we have that edge. At the same time, we have an edge in terms of users because we are really seeing traction, a community being developed organically who are aggressively using some of these dApps that has been built by us or by the community. So that's quite encouraging.
That's fantastic. I mean, it's good to see that Zilswap is ranked so highly. That is fantastic. We have actually used Zilswap a few times, so it's pretty cool. I do like it, and we are big fans of Zilliqa and GZIL for that matter as well. Staking ZIL for that sweet GZIL all the way through to October would be fantastic. Chris, do you want to go into the next question?
Yeah, so I guess we kind of touched on it a little bit with the Ethereum bridging and stuff like that, but are there any plans to partner with any other blockchains, perhaps in other ways?
Yeah, so I mean, partnerships, as you know, it's a very, sometimes is liked and hated term in the blockchain world. And we definitely believe in partnering with projects and working along with projects who collaborate with us. So not just in the name, but actually in real world. We recently announced a partnership with a company called Polaris, which is a marketing agency based out of Portugal. And the idea is to basically work with some of the football players, well-known football players, including Pepe and you name it, 10 football players that we announced recently. We can't release much detail right now, but the idea is to work with them, and you will hear some more news in that direction. What we do see is that there are certain areas where we would like to improve upon. For example, on ZilSwap, we currently have a few tokens, but I believe that we need more tokens for people to trade and use. So one idea is obviously the Ethereum Zilliqa bridge that will bring assets automatically from Ethereum to Zilliqa. But at the same time, we are seeing a need and a desire to build new tokens on top of platform. 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗓, for example, is a good example. UFFS, for example, recently did a fundraise for their fantasy sports token SCO. So a lot of native tokens will build as well. At the same time, we'll be bringing other assets. So the more assets you have, the more tokens you will have to trade, and the more transactions will go to the network, and therefore the more ZILs will get logged out of circulation. Because the idea is Zilliqa implements an idea where if you're sending a transaction to the network, the fees that you pay for the transaction to be processed doesn't actually go to the miners. They get taken out of circulation. So it actually reduces the circulating supply and therefore helps every token holder. So that basically captures value as the network grows in some sense. So with all these applications being built and the partnerships that we have been working on, that some of them have not been announced yet, the idea is to grow the transaction volume. And I'm really happy to see the community is actually participating very, very healthily in some of these ecosystem projects, which is really nice to see.
That is good. I mean, it's fantastic to see, a community building around the platform, right? And ultimately that is key. As you were saying earlier, ultimately it is about usability of a platform at the end of the day. And that's one of the struggles that we often find with Ethereum, right? It just becomes a bit unusable with the gas fees and things like that. So it's fantastic to have, another platform that you can rely on for your DeFi. And we usually turn to Zilliqa for that, I have to say. And it's a fantastic platform to use.
If you think about it, right? People, and there's obviously, the Ethereum has a lot of network effect, right? Ethereum has a lot of people developing on top of the platform. But I often hear from people saying, "Oh, there's nothing happening outside of Ethereum," and this is plain wrong. I mean, just look around. I mean, I've seen that myself in the Zilliqa community, that a lot of people who are actually using ZilSwap today as a DEX, many of them have never used Uniswap.
Yeah.
And one reason is because they feel that it's, the Ethereum community still requires you to a little bit tech savvy enough to use some of those things, right? It's even though it's the same thing, the support that you get from the community, well-knit community is very powerful. And people are talking about DeFi numbers, user numbers are growing, and they are growing. I'm not denying that. But if you look at the number of people who are actually using DeFi today, let's say Uniswap, for example, around 100,000 users on a 7-day basis, right? Which is quite low compared to how big Uniswap is in terms of the total trading volume that they do. Compared to that, ZilSwap is at number 3.
Yeah,
it kind of surprised me because our communities are obviously much smaller than the Ethereum community, but still, it's very clear to me there are a lot of users, a lot of Ethereum holders who have never used any of the Ethereum dApps, and that's surprising.
Yeah,
because
I can understand it though. You're right. It is challenging. Some of the stuff's just really complicated. I mean, we hear about it firsthand from the community that watch the show, right? We're inundated with messages on Twitter and Facebook and various other platforms. Telegram would be another one, where there's a lot of confusion, and it's probably not helped as well because there's lots of scams at the moment as well. So you've got that mixture of it's a challenge for them to use some of the platforms that are out there, but there's also that worry about scams as well.
Yeah, and I was talking about this earlier. When people have this vision of DeFi to be able to allow people to get access to financial service or products and services with only a mobile phone internet connection, that's a very powerful vision. Imagine today when someone comes from Nigeria or remote parts of Bangladesh or India, it's very difficult for these people to get access to a loan in certain countries because of their credit history. And that could have been eliminated if we had DeFi in the right hands. But unfortunately, if you look today, if you rank all the DeFi, if you look at all the DeFi sort of apps that are being built or have been built on Ethereum, and if you sort of count the number of users or percentage of users who come from emerging markets like India, Bangladesh, and Indonesia, you name it, the number of people is less than 5%. So even though the vision is there, I don't think we are serving the right people. Maybe let me rephrase it. It's not like, I don't think we are serving the people who need DeFi the most in some sense.
Yeah.
most of the, I mean, one argument could be that most of the capital that's being put today in DeFi are all coming from Western world, which is true. But then there's a problem, because then we are not serving the people who really need to be able to have access to bank accounts, because some people certainly don't. They're still living in a cash-based society. They don't even know how they can borrow money or they can do micro lending, for example. So there's still a gap between what I think DeFi vision is and was, and where we are today in terms of adoption from that angle. There's a lot of activities still centered around a few people, a few thousand people, about 10,000 people.
So on that note about the right people perhaps getting the opportunity to utilize these sorts of platforms and the tech, are there any plans or any work that's happening in the background in some areas of the world where that focus needs to be?
Yeah. So if you look at, for example, again, Singapore is a bad example in that sense, because it's still a very developed country, but I was still very surprised to see that bigger economies like, let's say, Japan or Korea or even China to some extent. When we looked at all the stable coins I mentioned earlier, USD was the biggest stable coin out there. Then was euros, and third one was Singapore dollars. I was expecting something like Japan or Korea or other countries, or Australia, or other countries coming up, because Singapore is a tiny market. It's even smaller than any city in England, I would say, in most cities in England, for example. So that was quite surprising. And the idea with this Singapore dollar-backed stablecoin is to be able to extend that to XIDR, so Indonesian rupiah-backed stablecoin. And one of the problems that I see in Indonesia is it's a very cash-based society. At the same time, it's a society which has a country which has 50 to 60% underbanked or unbanked population. So the idea to be able to give, let's say, people access to those services is going to be very powerful. Today, for example, you have people living in remote villages in Indonesia, and they would like to have access to banks, but banks are so far away that they can't connect. So now startups are building sort of agents, a network of agents that sit between consumers and their banks, and they basically sort of help you transact with your bank in some sense. And but these agents, they don't have banking license, so they can't hold funds or a large amount of funds for you. So the idea would be, can we sort of give these agents stable coins, which gives them, because there would be no limit per se with stable coins, the idea of then it will become much easier for people to transact with higher amounts. Then you could imagine micro lending, right? Today a £10 loan in the UK is not worth it, but the £10 loan would be would be huge. For example, when a farmer wants to buy seeds in remote Bangladesh, for example, or remote Indonesia. So the idea is to be able to build some of this infrastructure as well. And at least, even though Singapore is not a good example, but seeing that Singapore dollar is still the third largest after USD and euros, it gives me a sense that we are going in the right direction, that there is a market there in that region, in ASEAN and Southeast Asia, where people need some of these DeFi products more urgently than anyone else.
That sounds fantastic.
That's great. Yeah. So that's fantastic. Yeah. And what do you think, with all of that kind of said, your biggest accomplishment so far is for Zilliqa?
Yes, I would say that would definitely be implementing sharding, because when we started to sort of work on sharding, it sounded very complicated, even when we were writing on paper and so on. But the good thing is that we were able to sort of implement that. Of course, we had some hiccups and, we had said, oh, we'll finish that in a month's time or 2 months' time. It took us 6 months to get there. But at least in the end, I do feel proud that we have been able to achieve that. At the same time, we achieved and we delivered more than what we had promised to the community when we sort of started the sort of TGE and so on. And the good thing is that now we are seeing other projects sort of following that step. So it gives you sort of a confirmation that what you did was right and in the right direction. And it's good that other people are sort of following the steps that we started. So that I would say was our, not mine, but team's biggest achievement till date.
Super. And I guess, where do you see Zilliqa in 5 years from now?
Well, as you know, 5 years is a very long time in the blockchain world. DeFi, even though it existed in some shape, they were not in the same shape as it is today. Before the DeFi summer last year. So the world changes very fast, and so I certainly do believe in having a roadmap or have an idea of where I see Zilliqa in the next, let's say, 1 or 2 years. But beyond that, we have to be adaptive. We have to adapt to what new comes on.
Yeah.
Because something that's working today may not work tomorrow. Something that's not working today may obviously work tomorrow.
Sure.
Ethereum lending, was developed a long time ago before Aave. I mean, Aave was basically, came out of a project called ETHLend in some sense. But yeah, some of these projects already existed, let's say 3 years ago, but they were never getting traction. It was only recently that people started to see the value of these money markets. So I do see that. I would love to see Zilliqa, and I've set some targets at the community publicly, saying that today, for example, Zilliqa, a month ago, Zilliqa was processing around 60,000 transactions per day.
Yeah.
Ethereum is processing around 1.2 million to 1.3 million transactions per day. My target was to reach half of that, so 600,000 transactions per day by the end of the year.
Yeah.
And obviously, these are sort of KPIs that I'm setting for a community, but obviously, you have to build products. You have to build resources that people will be able to use to drive that value. If you look at the value being settled in ZILs today on the chain, it's around $70 million per day.
Nice.
Ethereum is tens of billions, I think, if I'm not wrong. So the idea is to be able to beat something like PayPal, which does, I think, a couple $1 billion per day. I think it's a bit lofty at this stage, but I think if we continue at the pace we are going, I'm pretty sure and confident that we would be able to reach some of these numbers either this year or early next year for sure.
That's great. Yeah, that would be fantastic to see. Surpass PayPal. That would be good.
Yeah, and we've been invested in Zilliqa for an awful long time now. So it's been really great to see the progression over the period of time that we've been invested, hasn't it, Nick?
It really has. Yeah, it's moved quite well in terms of everything. I mean, even before 𝗕𝗓𝗪, right, and the launch of the 𝗕𝗓𝗪, and then obviously really heavily kind of incentivizing to stake, right? Because why wouldn't you? So it makes a lot of sense. And yeah, really looking forward to everything that will come from 𝗕𝗓𝗪, as well. I think it's going to be cool to see.
Yeah, the good thing is that, a year ago or 2 years ago, people who were holding ZILs as a token, they didn't have much options to do with their ZILs. So all they could do was hold and hope that the price will go up. But today they can actually put their ZILs to use. So they could put them on staking and on returns. They could put that on ZILSwap and on swap tokens. And very soon, once the Pillar protocol comes live, you'll be able to put your ZILs as a collateral and then borrow Pillar stable coins and do something with that. So a lot more options are coming up for people to put their ZILs to use, and that's kind of why we are seeing a lot of transactions, a lot of ZIL volumes are going towards the network, which is a good sign.
It really is, yeah. So yeah, those are kind of the main questions that were kind of posed to us from the community. But is there anything else that you would like to kind of let the audience know that we potentially hasn't been covered off yet?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I firmly believe within Zilliqa is that we know that getting onboarded on DeFi is tough. That's kind of one reason why you don't see many of the people holding Ether and assets, but they're still sort of far away from using any of the dApps out there. I firmly believe in sort of helping some of those communities sort of get onboarded. I remember there's a email application called Superhuman, I think. It's very popular. Used to be popular in the States. And basically what they do is they had a system where, so it's like a Gmail thing basically for subscription. So you subscribe for that and then you have a Gmail-like account with better user experience. And what they do is when you buy the subscription, they invite you for a 1-hour call with one of their agents, and they basically take you through how to use that application, the email application. I think we need as a team and as someone who is sort of building this community out, we need, and we believe in sort of putting that effort. So to sort of educate people, let them learn some of these things so that they can use some of these apps and not just be an outsider holding their ZILs and hoping that the price will go up. So we definitely believe in sort of helping any of these people out. And then if you have questions, just ping us on Twitter, Telegram, and on Discord, and we'd be happy to help you. If you are still unsure what DeFi is or NFTs are, we're happy to help you out.
Another angle on what you just touched on, we've had lots of people over the last several months that watch the show that want to quit their jobs that that they find dull. They've been doing them for a long time and they really want to get involved in projects. What would be the advice from yourself to sort of get more involved and make a career in blockchain?
Yeah, this is a very good. I mean, if there's one good news that I extract from price going up is that people become financially independent to a point where they'll say, okay, I'm done with my day job and I would do something exciting in the blockchain world. So that's really good news to hear. In terms of Zilliqa, we have a program called Zilhive. So if you have, let's say, want to build something, or if you see that okay, Zilliqa is lacking this piece, and it'd be good to have that piece. Just send your application through Zilhive, and they would be happy to fund that project. You're also launching a venture arm called Zilliqa Capital, which will be able to come with bigger checks as well. So very soon. So yeah, I mean, don't hesitate. Just start something. And again, I've said this on Twitter a couple of times that I think we as humans, I think we need to do a startup at least once in our lifetime. It teaches you a lot. I can't imagine 2 years ago I would not have started. I have hoped of doing a startup, but I'm glad that I did with some of my founders, and it has been an amazing journey. You learn a lot. You learn. I mean, obviously, if you can hold the fort for let's say a couple of years. I mean, okay, you start a startup, then abandon after 1 month. Then it doesn't make much sense. But if you hold the fort for a couple of years, you will learn a lot about different skills that no one can teach you. You have to learn that by your experience. So yeah, get your hands dirty. If you have made enough money in the space, put that money aside and get your hands dirty and build something interesting that you'd be very proud of.
Yeah, definitely. I can testify to that. You learn an awful lot about yourself when you're doing something for yourself and for a community, right? And I'd also testify to how good the blockchain community is, because we've met some wonderful people that are ultra supportive in the space, and it's different from day-to-day life, if you're working a 9 to 5. So yeah, definitely get your hands dirty and get involved for sure.
And you learn a lot. You learn a lot along the way. There's so many interesting things happening every single day that you won't have. There's no scarcity of learning. Learning new things. It's just that you won't have enough time. So yeah, get your hands dirty. There are tons of interesting things happening, and I'm sure that you will learn a lot, and you probably will make a lot of money if you do the right things.
Definitely.
Fantastic. Well, it's been fantastic to have you join us today. Really do appreciate taking the time, and catch up again in due course and see what the next next 2 things are on the horizon.
Yeah,
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you very much, Nicholas.
Cheers.
Great meeting you.
Thanks.
Bye. And that was 𝗕𝗪𝗓 from Zilliqa. I really appreciate spending the time with him this afternoon. It was fantastic to learn even more about what Zilliqa has been up to and where it might be going in the future. Chris, anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, it was just fantastic. Really appreciate spending the time with 𝗕𝗪𝗓 today. Again, every day is a school day, right? We're learning every day. It's fantastic.
Fantastic. Guys, if you found it useful and informative, hit that like button. We both really do appreciate it. And of course, as always, if you are new to the channel and you'd like to stay up to date with those new cryptocurrencies and hidden gems, then do subscribe to the channel. By subscribing, you'll be kept up to date with absolutely everything we do here. It is free. You'll stay well informed, so why not? And with that said and done, we hope you have a fantastic day, guys, and we'll catch you all in the next one.
Yeah, take care.